Good morning and welcome to the Jersey Magazine here at 105.5 WDHA. I'm Jim Monaghan. My guest this morning is the Vice President and CFO of Jaeger Sports. You can see the logo on his shirt, as a matter of fact. He's also the founder of Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression Foundation, and he's just published a new mental health manual and companion. China McCarney, good morning and welcome to DHA.
Good morning, Jim. Thank you so much for having me.
Where did the idea for this book come about?
Yeah, so it happened kind of early in the pandemic. I think we were all kind of adjusting in our own ways, and we had more time than we had ever had. And I've always been looking for a tangible resource for the foundation, the mental health foundation. And I just thought, trying to give back to the consumer a real world approach to mental health and a companion journal where they can kind of get to work, pen to paper, to try some resources out to improve their mental health and kind of take control of their own mental health journey.
Where did your own mental health journey start?
It started for me in 2009. I was pursuing professional baseball. I was a junior in college, and all the pressure kind of led to that point, and I had my first panic attack. Didn't know it was a panic attack, thought it was a heart attack because of the physical symptoms, and hid that from everybody for 6 years. And so looked one way on the outside and was feeling very differently on the inside. And so finally reached out for therapy help in 2015. So struggled alone for 6 years. And that's kind of what the manual, hopefully, and the foundation bridges that gap is, everybody's going through something, and you don't need to struggle alone for 6 years before you reach out for a resource or for some help.
Yeah, one of the key factors that you just mentioned in the book is, by talking to someone, you learn that you're not alone in this journey, that there are other people, because I think part of the stigma of mental health is that I'm the only one who feels like this. No one else feels like this. I can't tell anybody because they don't understand how I feel, when in fact, that's not even remotely the case.
Yes, absolutely. And that's, I think, the first therapy session that I had, that was the weight that I felt off my chest after opening up to the therapist, walking out, getting back into my car. It was like I had the biggest deep breath I had in, years, because she gave me permission. She gave me statistics on how many people struggle. And then in the winter of that year, when I opened up and kind of released my story on social media, that's when I realized how prevalent this was. That's why I started the foundation, and how many of my friends, family, and professionals that I looked up to were dealing with the same sort of mental struggles on an everyday basis.
That big exhale that you just did, I think of pitchers on the mound, and we tell young pitchers all the time, control your breathing, control your breathing. That slow inhale, that slow exhale, trying to help you calm down, as it were. So once you had that first session, were you still playing ball?
No, I stopped playing ball in 2012. And I was fortunate enough with Jaeger Sports. I went to my first Jaeger Sports camp in 1999, that I was exposed to mental training for athletics through Alan Jaeger as a 12-year-old. And so I had little seeds planted. And so there was stuff that I went to in my playing career that really helped me mentally, but I didn't get therapy and officially attack like the real world mental health issues until I was done playing and it had moved on from the game.
There are a couple of statistics in the book that stood out to me, China. 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins at age 14. That's incredible to be, that young. We think of kids as being so resilient and don't always think of a 14-year-old, and sometimes even younger, but that 14-year-old, that's such a critical time in a child's life.
Yeah. And another stat in there is, ages 10 to 34, the second leading cause of death is suicide. That one hit me very hard as well. And I think it's a responsibility of like leadership and, hopefully in schools and definitely with coaches in athletics, that we teach, young athletes, not even young athletes, just young people, that it's okay to not be okay sometimes, and that it's okay to go through struggles. And I think we can all remember thinking back to middle school, high school, that we really cared about what people thought. I think that leads to it a lot, buying Payless shoes. I remember wearing Payless shoes to school and being so self-conscious over people judging my Airwalks instead of Vans or whatever it was. But, and now there's so much more stimulation with technology and social media and stuff like that, that there's a lot more being thrown at these kids at a young age. And so we need to do a good job of, building a foundation of mental health and mental strength so that as they get older, start facing the real world issues, they're more ready to kind of deal with them and live a productive and fulfilling life.
How much of a factor do you think social media is through all of this, especially for a young kid?
I can't put it into words, the effect that I think it has on not only kids, but adults. And I think when not consumed correctly, and when we mindlessly scroll or spend hours on there or compare our meal to other people's meals or our vacations to the other vacations, I think it's led to not only an increased level of like anxiety and self-esteem issues. I think unfortunately with the foundation and the parents that have reached out to me, I think it's led to a lot more suicides, a lot more judgments, because with a filter you can make everything look good. You can criticize someone or be negative towards them because you're behind the safety of a keyboard. You're not face to face with them. And so while I think there's some positives to social media with keeping up with friends and family and stuff like that, I think there's a tremendous more amount of negative that we don't even fully understand yet based on the algorithms and the stuff that we don't even know about that's behind the scenes. So it's something I try to do a good job with myself. I don't have the apps on my phone anymore. They were in a folder called Social Crappia when they were on my phone. And I try to do a good job of only using it for kind of spreading mental health stories or letting people know that it's okay to not be okay.
China McCarney, our guest, he's the vice president and CFO of Jaeger Sports, and he's just published the Mental Health Manual and Companion. The Companion is pretty much like a journal where you're writing down your thoughts as you go through this whole process. How important was that for you?
That was very important. And I tried to create anything that I do now with the attention span of the modern world in mind. Writing a 200-page book nowadays, there's some people that will read it, but there's a lot more that are like, yeah, right. Can I get a 3-minute video? Can I get a 3-minute video on YouTube that explains the cliff notes? So the companion journal, it goes right along with the mental health manual, where it's one resource at a time. So for instance, we'll be looking at nutrition. And then in the companion journal, it's just 3 questions you can ask yourself. How would you say your nutrition is on a scale of 1 to 10? What's one thing you can improve about your nutrition? Yada, yada, yada. And it's like that for every resource. And so I wanted to do more than just a book where you tell someone to read. I wanted to give people an opportunity that they can kind of do their own therapy, and they can look at the most popular mental health resources that have been proven to help people and kind of, pen to paper, self-analyze, what's been working for them, where do they want to change? Because let's face it, there's barriers with mental health, like medication and therapy and stuff like that, with cost and everything like that. So if you are able to get your hands on this, you can do it for free, without judgment, in the comfort of your own home.
One of my favorite sections of the book is the bad habits to avoid. I can't tell you how many of those bad habits I have, including clutter. If you've seen my office at the radio station or my home office here, and it's weird because some rooms in the house are meticulously organized, and then there's others, and it's just chaos.
Yeah, no. One of my friends about a couple years ago gave me a book called Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui or something. And then I read and saw the minimalism documentary, and I was like, all right. And then I started to implement it little by little. And then all of a sudden it kind of became this fun, competitive obsession with what can I literally get rid of, and how little amount of things can I have around my space. And so at home, especially, one of my rules before I go to bed is I want to wake up to a clean house the next day. No dishes, pillows in the right spot on the couch and everything like that. Because it is just the little things, if you're 1% thinking about the clutter or having to do the dishes, that can take away from something else mentally. And so that's just one of those things. But yeah, clutter was a big one for me. And when I think back to childhood with my dad, he was a plumber, and getting into his plumbing trucks was like getting through a hoarder's, living room. It was crazy.
If you look at the back of my car, it's all baseball stuff, and it's organized in a certain way.
Yeah.
Ball bag is here. Pitching bag is here with Jaeger bands in it, as a matter of fact. My paperwork's in another spot. The back is meticulous.
There
The
we go.
back seat, like there's a rule, don't give me anything to put in my car because there's a really good chance it won't come out of the back seat.
Yeah.
So that clutter chapter for me, or section rather, was absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
China, what's the difference between having a bad day and where the stress and the anxiety just starts to build up and you do start dealing with depression? Where's that line?
That's a great question. That's not a question I've had before, and I love those the most because it makes you think on the spot. I think the difference is you being honest with yourself. If it's repetitive, your energy level goes down. When we talk specifically about depression, you literally have a hard time doing things that you normally do, no problem. Getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, bathing, just little things that are so habitual. Depression just zaps your energy and you're dark, tired, you recluse yourself, right? So if you find yourself not wanting to talk to people, you're judging yourself, kind of going through that, and that's repetitive over a period of time, that's where it can't hurt to reach out to a friend, to a therapist, if you have the means or something like that, just to see, because they'll ask the right questions. But a bad day we all have. And I think it's where reflection becomes so important at the end of a day, where you start to just figure out who you are. Like my two biggest words are intention and reflection. I want to have an intention every day. And then I want to have a reflection on, what happened that day? How did I respond? And you got to get to know yourself to know the difference between a bad day and then a cycle of, okay, my mood or personality is changing. I think I need to talk to somebody. And anxious and nerves and panic attacks and healthy anxiety, that's another distinction too to cover, where everybody gets anxious about a presentation or something that's a big deal because we care. Where it's debilitating is where either the angst and the nerves become so consuming that you can't do the presentation, or you have to back out or recluse, or it becomes such a high level, like for me, where I couldn't go into a grocery store to get groceries because I had a panic attack. I couldn't pick up my food because I was living in the panic attack in my head and couldn't get out and couldn't get away from there. And so I think it's a getting to know yourself process, and then a trial and error of resources to figure out what works for you, what puts you in the best mental space for you and your loved ones around you.
China McCarney is our guest this morning on the Jersey Magazine here at 105.5 WDHA. He's just published the Mental Health Manual and Companion. So this pandemic that we've all been going through, these unprecedented times, if you will, how did that affect you?
It's funny because what are we? It's July 1st as we speak. Holy moly, that happened quick. So we're 15, 16 months kind of into it. I'm in Southern California, so we're still kind of dealing with mask mandates and different things. And for me, it was cyclical, right? Like at first I was going to be a competitor and I was going to take it on and use the time to be productive. And then, 2, 3, 4 months in, just the void of your everyday life, things that you took for granted, seeing people. And I live pretty reclused because of my anxiety. Like I have my fiance and different things, and see my parents occasionally, but I don't have like the most tremendous social life going out that much. But after about 3 or 4 months, you started to notice different things. You couldn't go to a basketball court and shoot hoops. Couldn't go to the beach. You couldn't do a lot of things. And so for me, it was depression. I felt like I was sleeping a lot more. And when I would get that sleep, I didn't have energy because of it. And that's another kind of telltale sign of depression, is when, you sleep for 10 or 12 hours, you should probably have some energy after the grogginess. And I was, still feeling like I was running on empty. And so there was about a little period of depression, and I got with a therapist again and got religious about that once a week and kind of dealt with it. But every word that you can use, every adjective to describe it, there was blessings, there was time to create, write a manual, do creative things, clear my clutter with feng shui. And then there was definitely are we going to get out of this? Is the world coming back to normal? What can I touch? What can I touch? Washing hands. So I'd say I ran the gamut. Just like I'm sure a lot of people, this is kind of cool to this is the most terrifying thing that's happened in my lifetime.
One of the things that you mentioned that it's a positive thing that you can do is exercise. And I'm thinking about that because athletes, obviously, professional athletes, let's say, we all watch baseball and what have you. these are highly trained athletes. They're highly motivated athletes. You know that they're doing the training, and yet you see how some of them are affected by stress and anxiety. So, I think back to myself and how if I exercise, I feel better. Yet at the same time, the motivation to exercise, and we were talking off, before we went on the air here, having a knee operation. Well, I have to exercise. I don't have a choice. If this is going to rehab, I have to do it. And there was just some mornings like, yeah, I'll do it later on in the day.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great point. In terms of like mental health as a whole, one resource is not going to be the be all end all for everybody. And that's one of the things I kind of cover at the beginning is I tried to go over as many resources that have been proven by doctors and mental health professionals that have helped: nutrition, therapy, sleep, journaling, all that kind of stuff. But everyone's recipe is going to be a little different. So exercise has been proven to help for sure. There's endorphins, there's all that kind of stuff that gets released. But at the same time, if I'm doing that without any pressure or stress, because I go on a run and it's kind of a meditation, that's totally different than a professional athlete that misses a couple free throws at the end of a playoff game and then everybody's questioning his career, right? So that's going to contribute to his mental health in a different way, even though he's getting that exercise and running around. So that's where I always have this saying that you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So the work you put into yourself, getting to know yourself, figuring out what resources work for you, what's your best recipe for your best mental health. The more time effort you put into it, the better it's going to be on the other side. The more self-aware you're going to be of what you need to do and what are your non-negotiables, which is what I have with sleep and, certain amounts of caffeine and stuff like that.
With Jaeger Sports, you and Alan deal obviously with a lot of young athletes. How much of the mental aspect of various sports do you deal with these players?
A lot now, especially the way the company's grown. And I've been here now in some capacity for 22 years, which sounds insane. But I've been here working full time for 11 years now. And most of the one-on-one sort of mental training sessions, if you will, I'm conducting a lot of those. And so I deal with it a lot. And it's a balancing act between mental training for specific, like athletic specificity, if that's even a word, specificity. Let's not use that word. Okay. Let's go to a different word. But like dealing with specific athletic mental training as opposed to just dealing with mental health and mental training as a whole. I think there's a balancing act there to where there's performance anxiety and what can you do to kind of stay outside of your head and let your talent take over, to what's contributing to your mental health off the field to create the best position for you to succeed. So dealing with that balancing act, and that's the fun of teaching, is I'm learning as much as, I'm hopefully teaching.
The book is called The Mental Health Manual and Companion, and 100% of the proceeds are going towards creating mental health resources for those in need. If you're interested in learning more about the book, mentalhealthmanual.org, and you can follow China on Twitter at China McCarney. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great talking with you again here this morning on WDHA.
No, thank you, Jim. Thanks so much for letting me share.